Here. Thank you. Well done, Kate. Thank you very much. um, it feels like a very big day, evening for us because we've been working really hard to get to this point. So welcome to Voices of Bradfield's candidate search launch. I'm Dr. Samantha Graham, President of Voices of Bradfield, and on behalf of the Executive Committee and our large and growing community of volunteers, many of whom I'm looking at, we are again delighted to welcome you, residents of Bradfield and those from further afield, to an evening this time with Cathy McGowan. I've been calling her, I haven't asked her if this is okay, godmother of the Voices of movement and former MP for the seat of Indi in Victoria. So Voices of Bradfield is an independent community organisation. We are thoroughly united by our shared purpose in returning respect, integrity and trust to politics. And we are somewhat urgently and hopefully in the main joyfully getting on with this so that we can build a voice in our democracy for the people of Bradfield. And tonight we have a very clear focus, and that's announcing formally that we are searching for the person who will be our candidate at the next federal election to truly represent the concerns, values and wishes of the diverse people of Bradfield. So 3 things to cover before we turn to our esteemed guest speaker for the evening. We are recording this, as some of you may have seen, so that others can watch it later on our newly established Voices of Bradfield YouTube channel. That's just for your information. Please put any questions that you might have in the chat, as we've done in the past, and we'll take those in the last 30 minutes if they haven't already been answered by then. And the second thing to do is just for me to hand to Gillian, who is going to acknowledge the land that we're on, the acknowledgement of country. Thank you, Gillian.
Thank you, Assistant. This meeting is, hello everybody, this meeting is hosted by the Voices of Bradfield on the sandstone country of the Darra Murrugull and Guringai clan. They met here for thousands of years to share news, family and culture. At night, they looked up to the familiar skies, and maybe they told the story of the 7 sisters, shown here in the painting by Gabriella Possum Nungarai. We follow in their footsteps, and we acknowledge and pay respects to the traditional custodians and elders of the Darra Murrugull and Guringai clans, and the continuation of cultural, spiritual and education practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. We continue our journey of listening and work towards kinship and equality under the eternal stars.
Thank you, Gillian. Beautiful. And for those of us who haven't been here before, and perhaps we're not even part of Bradfield, people are very welcome wherever you are. I will just show you the map of Bradfield to give you a, let's say, Western geographical sense of where and who we are. Now, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Got a few nods? Yes, thank you. Right, so North Turramurra in the north, a little arm out to the southeast, Castle Cove. We've got Roseville, Linfield, Killara, Pymble, all the way up the line. Wahroonga, Asquith, that's the electorate that we are all placing our attention on. I would like to know if I can do this rather elegantly, who we are as we're gathering here. So I'm just going to show you the buttons down the bottom and then get you to do a show of hands. You're all familiar with the reactions down the bottom, which might be handy this evening. If you go to the bottom of the screen, yep, you can see the reactions, the raise hand. If you've got a question, yep, getting thumbs up, and lots of people nodding, which is, this is old school, isn't it? I mean, you're all familiar with it. What I'm going to test drive now is this poll. Can you see this poll. I would love you to answer that question. Oh, it's untitled. This is showing how beginner I am at doing Zoom polls. Oh, okay, they're kicking in. You all know what to do. Oh, that's very exciting to have instant data like that. 96% of you are from Bradfield, and that's with 30 people having answered already. 88%, yep, so a few more from outside the electorate. Very cool. Okay, great, 88%, that's where we'll leave that one. Thank you, awesome. The other question I guess I want to pose is in the chat, just so we get familiar with using the chat, what electorates are other people from, those of you who aren't from Bradfield? Diane, you couldn't see the poll. Oh, that's strange. Berowra, okay. Maybe it's because you're from Berowra. It doesn't show it to people from outside the electorate. Indi, okay, yeah, Cathy's from Indi, this we know. Great, so just write that in the chat if you would care to share with us where you're from. Great. All right, so a little bit about Voices of Bradfield. The purpose I've just stated, the why of Voices of Bradfield. Who we are, we are a group of residents, 6 concerned residents who, that's just the start of the team really. We've got 50 plus volunteers and our community is growing rapidly. I'll give you a little flavour of who we are to give you a sense of what sort of people have convened this evening for you. I'm a mum and a daughter and a wife. I have a 15-year-old boy. My PhD was in corporate sustainability, and I was looking at what kind of leadership does it take to make the transition to a more sustainable economy. I run my own business and I have done so for 18 years on leadership development. Rob, our secretary, is trained as a lawyer, and he's combining his senior level corporate work in the past in the aviation industry, combined with years on P&Cs. So if you know, that's quite a diverse set of skills right there. And he's our go-to person for governance matters. He dots the I's and crosses the T's in terms of our accountability, our transparency, and our strategic direction. And you'll be hearing from him a bit later. Carolyn ran as an independent in the New South Wales. You can put your hands up, team, if you'd like to. In the New South Wales Senate elections in 2019. So she's got vast experience in all things campaign oriented. She works full time. She's a mom, a grandmother, and she and Stuart, her husband, who's also on the team, simultaneously caring for elderly parents as best you can in a pandemic. So this is just to give you a flavour of who we are and what sort of people we are. We're real, we're concerned, and we're just doing everything we can to make a change. So Stuart is a retired hotelier, and he's worked all over the world and is rather a genius, I have to say, on all things social media. I say that because I'm of an age, we're the same age, and he gets social media. I mean, he's all over it. And he's also got some t-shirts to sell you that he and Carolyn designed, and he's a volunteer coordinator, a job that fortunately just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So thank you, volunteers. And we will be calling on people this evening to try to take some of the load because it's growing so fast. Now, Dr. Kate Ahmad is a neurologist. She's a mother of 4, she's waving, and she's here for climate action and gender equity. She's organised a petition that gathered 100,000 signatures on behalf of women against violence, people against violence towards women. Sorry, Kate. That was presented at the March for Justice event in Canberra and was subsequently tabled in Parliament. It was doctors against violence towards women. I'll get that right. Gillian is a retired social researcher who ran a small business for 20 years. And she's in this particularly for her children and grandchildren. And amongst her many, many skills, her research skills have been invaluable to the team. Just last night, we crossed the threshold of over 500 survey responses that she's been patiently drawing insights out of, as well as coordinating volunteers and all sorts of other things. So that's just to give you a flavour of who we are. Now, the what we've done is going to become apparent during the course of the evening, and what's still to do. So I was looking at when 2 of us first got together, and that was on December 2nd that we met Tina Jackson, who was part of Zali Stegel's campaign, December 2nd. And then just looking through where we've been and what we've done in preparation for this, it was April 28th that we set up Voices of Bradfield as an incorporated association, the 6 of us. And, you know, all of what goes with setting up an organization, bank accounts, websites, surveys, processes, protocols, governance reporting, that's the what of what we've been doing, so that we can reach out to you and really build community to be the foundation out of which the candidate will be selected by us, us collectively, us. So how have we done this? I've done the why, the who, the what. How, basically, a lot of hard work and following the likes of Cathy McGowan and her model, and doing kitchen table conversations until COVID came in, and then switching to surveys, which, as I just mentioned, we've gone over 500, running events in person and socials in person until we had to go online. We've got online chat groups, all sorts of things, the letterbox drops. That's how we've been reaching out. And that's basically who we are and what we've been up to. More specifically, I'm going to hand over to Rob Mills now to talk about the electorate, a little bit more detail, who's in our community. So over to you. Thanks, Rob.
I'll just unmuting myself, and I'm putting on my chubby little avatar, which is the way I look at the moment, because I'm sick of looking at my own face on Zoom. So this is just a kind of a quant view, so a numbers crunching view. Sorry, let me just try and get too many screens open. Of is it good? Can you can't see that yet, can you? No.
Not yet. Not yet.
Sorry, there we are. Sorry, there we are. Okay. Can we see that?
Yes.
Okay. Slightly different map of Bradfield to the one that you saw before. This is only 4 slides. I apologize to those of you who've been to KTCs pre-lockdown, and to those of you that we've spoken with on Zoom on various panels, just introducing the electorate. But we always find that it's good to get a fact base about what the electorate looks like. So I'm just going to quickly do that for about literally 5 minutes. This is where we live. The major population centres are Wahroonga, St Ives, Turramurra, Pimble, Killara. Most of them are on the North Shore line. We skew, oddly, slightly younger and slightly older than most of Australia and New South Wales. Now, this is 2016 data from the census, so it will have changed, obviously, but it's the best that we've got to go on at the moment. So you can see that we have a slightly larger cohort of the 15 to 19-year-olds, all of whom obviously will be voting if they're still in the electorate. We have some established families rather than younger families. That's more than likely because of the private schools in the area, and the high quality public schools as well. And we have a large cohort of people who are over 75. We have about the same proportion of Christians, traditional Christians, as the rest of the country and as New South Wales. We have a larger than normal proportion of people who describe themselves as of no religion. Our next 3 biggest cohorts are Hinduism, Judaism, and Buddhism. I don't think that will surprise anybody who knows the area. Of those, our Jewish members are 4 times bigger than is normal for New South Wales or Australia as a proportion of the population. Bradfield is wealthy. Again, that will be no surprise to anybody who lives here. I haven't put dollar numbers there because, again, this is 2016 and it's largely meaningless in 2021 and in a COVID world. But the relativity almost certainly still stands. The other way that you could look at it is property values, but nobody in Sydney wants to talk property values. Country of birth. We have a higher percentage of people who are not born in Australia than is normal for New South Wales and Australia. Normal meaning, I don't mean that in a normative sense, I mean in an average sense. Nearly 10% of Bradfield residents were born in the PRC, that's mainland China, which is a far higher percentage in Australia or New South Wales. If you then add in Taiwan, Hong Kong, Macau, because these are separate census areas, Singapore and Malaysia, assume that many of those are ethnic Chinese, then you get to about a 15% of the population are ethnically Chinese born. That is not the same thing as being ethnically Chinese. We have Chinese diaspora here who've been here since pre-Tiananmen. So they're 3 generations. They have Australian-born children. So my point is there is a large ethnic Chinese cohort here, not all of them born overseas. The next biggest cohorts are the English-born, Koreans, South Africans, Indians, and New Zealanders. Having said that we have the highest percent, or a very high percentage of people who weren't born here, we have the Australian average for people who are citizens. So many of those people, most of those people who were not born here have become citizens. So why is that important? It's because it means they can vote. Language spoken at home is kind of another proxy. We have a slightly lower percentage than is normal, the normal again, across New South Wales and Australia of people who are not speaking English at home. So it is important, and I didn't do a look around here of all the faces, and many people don't have faces on, but it is very important for an understanding of modern Bradfield that it is not Anglo, or not 100% Anglo. This is a very highly educated electorate. Nearly 45% of adult residents have at least a bachelor's degree as compared to 25% for Australia and New South Wales. We have double the number of postgrads, masters and doctorates and postdocs than New South Wales and Australia, which are at about 10%. Why is that important? Survey after survey, the Australian Electoral Survey, amongst others, which is run out of ANU, shows there is a high correlation between degree of education and concern about, for example, climate change. This is a white collar electorate. Again, that's no surprise to anybody who lives here. 45% of people of adults, the census doesn't ask children this question, describe themselves as professionals, which is 15 points higher than for Australia and New South Wales. 20% of people describe themselves as managers. We have about the same proportion of people in clerical work and sales work. We have very small proportions of people in the trades, operating machinery, or manual labourers. These are all census categories, by the way. I didn't make them up. So sectors, where are people working? Not surprisingly, because it's a white collar electorate. The biggest cohort are in professional, scientific and technical services. Then there's a significant proportion in healthcare and social assistance. We have a large number of bankers and superannuation and finance industry people. Again, I don't think that'll be a surprise to anybody who's socialized or networked in the electorate. That takes us to, I think, 7:20. So I will pause, and I think I have other stuff to say later on, or potentially answer some questions if people are interested.
That's great. Thank you, Rob. Lovely. If you don't mind unsharing your screen.
Yep.
That's fantastic. So Rob dives into serious amounts of data and pulls out what we need to know. And now you've got an understanding of who, what, why, where, how Voices of Bradfield is operating, and also the electorate that we're attempting to represent, to find the candidate to represent. It also is a bit of a signal to all of us, if we can, bring along our friends and people who are from parts of bring along our friends and family, but also to reach out to parts of the community that aren't represented in the faces that you see here. So as Rob just outlined, we'll come back to that in some more detail. But for now, with no further ado, I would like to introduce Cathy McGowan. Cathy came to national attention when she won the seat of Indi as an independent in 2013. The community backed her again in 2016. And in 2019, Indi made Australian political history when Dr. Helen Haynes who's our speaker in a couple of weeks as well, very generously, was elected as Indi's second independent woman. So during Cathy's time as a politician, she actively worked in Parliament to develop policy. Wouldn't that be nice to see actual policy? This was around regional development, constitutional change for First Nations people, and a solution to the indefinite detention of asylum seekers. Each of these issues has come up very much, particularly, well, we'll come back to what the surveys have been showing us, but have been very important to the people of Bradfield. In 2019, she was awarded the Accountability Roundtable Award for Political Integrity, and she is an officer of the Order of Australia, a Churchill Fellow, and lives very happily on her farm in the Indigo Valley in northeast Victoria. And you can see her website in the chat to take a look there and buy her book. We'll plug that again later. Cathy, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam and Rob, for those stats. And can I say that lovely welcome to country? That was really nice. So I've been asked to do three things in this segment, which will be about 15 minutes. And then I get a second bite of the cherry a little bit later on. But I've been asked to talk about why independents, what do they do, and what does it mean to be an independent? So I'm really happy to do that, as I say, for a short period of time, and then answer some other questions as the evening moves through. But my purpose in accepting the invitation tonight, I really want to say how incredibly proud I am to be invited here tonight to be part of this, just such an auspicious occasion. Whoever would have thought, I would never have thought that, 10 years ago, that this would be happening and that I'd be zooming in tonight to North Sydney to be part of your candidate selection process. So I'm really happy to do that. And I'm hoping that I can leave you tonight, at the end of tonight, feeling really inspired and motivated with some incredibly practical things that you can do to be successful in what you're trying to do. So that's what my intention is. So don't hesitate to ask me the hard questions and to really make the most of whatever it is that I might know that might be useful to you. So I want to talk about why independence. And I want to start by saying that this is not a personal thing, that your current MP might be a very good bloke. In fact, he might even be a very nice person. But my question is he being effective? Is he being effective on the issues that matter to you? And my suspicion is that you could probably do better. And it wouldn't be really hard to do better. And evidence shows that it's possible by electing a community-based independent to get better representation, to get better access to Parliament, to hold the government to account, and I think to make our country better. So that's what I'm going to talk about for a few minutes. And I'd like to start with the question, well, everybody asks me, well, what is it that independents do? And I've got three ways of answering that. I'm working in threes tonight, but basically, as a member of Parliament, whether or not you're an independent or not, there's three parts of the job. The most important part, I think, is to represent your community. And you do that in a whole lot of ways, but that's the main part of your job. You go to Canberra and you participate in politics in Canberra. You vote and you work in Parliament House for basically 20 weeks of the year. And those weeks are basically 4 days, Monday to Thursday, only 20 weeks of the year. It's not a lot of time. And then the rest of the time you're out and about in your electorate, doing what I call community work. You're meeting with people, you're understanding issues, you're sorting out problems, you're being active, you're a leader in your community. So that's the job of an MP. But when people talk about an independent, they say, well, what is it that's special about an independent? And I'd like to address my comments to that. So first and foremost, why you would want an independent as opposed to a party person is because the commitment of an independent is to actually represent the community, first and foremost. There's no second party that comes between you as an electorate and your member of Parliament. Whereas if you elect a member of Parliament, every single member of Parliament who's a member of a party every single member of a party actually pays money to join a party, and it's an in-group. So anybody else who's paid money to join that party then go and work together to work out what the policies are going to be, who's going to stand. So they run the show on behalf of the party. And it's got absolutely nothing to do with who the community is or what they want. So an independent, when people say, why would you bother? I say, well, fundamentally because they represent the electorate. They don't represent a party. And I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that. Not that I've got problems with the party. I'm sure the parties do big things. But from my perspective, as a community person, I want somebody as my member of parliament who I'm going to have a direct relationship with, and I don't have to go through others. And I know where their interests lie. So that's my number one reason for wanting to have an independent member of parliament. And then the next reason, but not necessarily in anybody else's sense of priorities, but the next reason is when they go to parliament, they do really interesting things in parliament. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of what they do. But before I talk about what they achieve, I just want to put at rest some of the, I'd say, rumours that float around. People say to me, oh, well, you're never at the table if you're an independent, or you can't get anything done, or you've got to be part of the government to get things done. Now, that's only ever said by people who are part of the government. If you're in opposition, clearly you don't think that. Like all those opposition members of parliament get things done and if they're at the table. So the thing about, I'm going to talk specifically now about Helen Haynes and Zali Stegel. They are at the table and they're incredibly important members of how parliament works. So the answer I say to people, well, they're at the main table, they're at the parliamentary table. And as well as that, they get to vote. But the real secret of an independent is every single vote they make is a conscience vote. They do what they think is right. Whereas if you're a member of a party, while occasionally you're allowed to cross the floor or vote as a conscience vote, mostly always you've got to follow the party line. And who knows, certainly I never discovered who sets the party line. It's somebody else. Whereas with an independent member of parliament, you know, the vote you're going to get always is a conscience vote and you can hold them to account for it. And if you're interested in this topic, can I encourage you to go to Zali's webpage and Helen's webpage, because both of those members of parliament put up their voting records and their reasons for every single bit of legislation they vote on. There's not a party member that I know that does the same thing, but the independents do it. So you know that you're getting a conscience vote. So they're at the table, and I know Helen, who's my member of parliament, she regularly meets with the Prime Minister. She's regularly talking to Josh Frydenberg, the Treasurer. They pay close attention to her and what she's saying and what she's thinking and what she's doing. But let me talk to the big picture of voting and being actually in parliament and what you get done. So in preparation for tonight, I did a bit of research on this. So I want to give you four things that independents have done and are doing. I want to talk first of all about Zali Stegel. Zali Stegel, representing Warringah, has absolutely changed the debate in Parliament on climate. And she did this by introducing a private members bill. Now, that private members bill hasn't been voted on yet. It has gone to committee and it is being circulated around Parliament. But what she has done by introducing that private members bill is she has put so much pressure on both Labor and the Liberal Party, not so much on the Nats, to actually justify why they think they're doing what they're doing. And one spectacular example that Zali's been able to call out, people like Trent Zinnerman, who's a member for North Sydney, because Trent says, oh, I'm all for climate, I'm all for action on climate. But when he had a chance to vote on that, he actually voted against it. So what does that tell you? He might be a good bloke as well, but how does he vote? So Zali's been able to actually change the way Parliament works on climate. Fantastic job. Now, she hasn't had enough friends on the crossbench yet to actually get the legislation changed, but hopefully after the next election, that will be different. Helen Haynes. Helen has actually championed integrity. So she's introduced, a bit like Zali, a private members bill on integrity, which if introduced would certainly have sorted out this current problem we've got with the member for Pearce. So again, Helen's legislation hasn't been voted on, but it has gone to committee and it's widely circulated, and the government regularly talk about it. And it's the standard now, which if the government does introduce their bill, and they said they would, but they haven't done it, the government would be held to account. And everybody's thinking they won't do it well enough because Helen's already set the standard. So we'll be able to see the gap, and then that will be a useful thing to do. So they've got those two MPs in particular have had incredible success on those two really big topics. But another member, an independent member you don't hear so much about, is Andrew Wilkie. Andrew's the member for Clark in Tasmania. And Andrew, his seat is a Labor seat, which he won in 2010. And Andrew almost single-handedly has called into account the big casinos. So the Royal Commission into Crown casinos in New South Wales, Victoria, Western Australia, and I think South Australia are all a direct result of the work that Andrew has done. So I don't know if you have been impacted by problem gambling in your community, but certainly in my community, it's a real issue. So to see Andrew being able to create such an impact in this area is really impressive. And the fourth crossbench person I want to briefly mention is Rebecca Sharkey. Now, technically, she's not an independent. She's a member of the Centre Alliance, but she sits on the crossbench with Helen and Zali and Andrew and Bob Catter. And so I said to Rebecca, what are you most proud of achieving? And she said, Cathy, well, it's not so much what we've done, it's what we've been able to stop the government doing. And then she sent me a long list of all the things that her and her work in the Senate have been able to stop the government doing things. And the one example I want to give you tonight, I know there's lots more, and you'll find them on her webpage, but the one that I thought was most poignant was earlier this year, or was it last year, the government was trying to introduce a rule that all the people on Centrelink payments had to have compulsory drug testing. Do you remember that? And it was Rebecca sort of acting as the conscience who got everybody organised and got the Senate organised and managed to vote that out. And there's a whole lot of other things that have happened because the crossbench and the Senate have worked together. And the other example I wanted to leave you with was in 2015, when Christopher Pyne was Minister for Education. He wanted to deregulate universities. He wanted to let every university be able to set all their own fees, which would have just been disastrous for our ability to get people through universities. And it was the crossbench and the Senate who voted down that legislation. We would have a totally different education sector now if that legislation hadn't been stopped. So they're just a few examples. But I want to just give you another one, sort of my all-time favourite one really, is that during the Second World War, and I'm a history graduate, so I love history. During the Second World War, the Prime Minister at the time was Mr. Menzies, and he was very supportive of England and Australia supporting England in the Second World War. And there was a growing movement at the time that all our soldiers were in Africa and Europe. But there was a growing movement because of the Japanese advance that our soldiers should come back home. Anyhow, as the whole debate was growing in Parliament, this is 1941, Menzies lost the numbers in the House because there was 2 independents who crossed the floor and resulted in Menzies no longer being the Prime Minister. It went to the Deputy Prime Minister, and then eventually it went to Curtin to become the Prime Minister. Curtin was a Labor Prime Minister. And it was those 2 independent members of Parliament who actually supported Curtin to bring home our soldiers from Europe and do the protection of Australia, in particularly up in Papua New Guinea. So if people are ever wanting to know the story, it's really, you can get that if you do a Wikipedia search, you can find it as well. But never underestimate the power of independence with goodwill and intelligence to change the whole history of Australia. So I'm going to stop there because it's getting close to my time up. But I just want to do, before I finish, I'm going to get a second bite of this cherry, I know, and people are going to ask me questions. But I really just wanted to finish off when people say, well, why independent? I look at them and turn the question on them and say, well, why not? Why not? What's wrong with having the choice? And don't you think we could have it better? Are you really happy with the government you've currently got? Or do you think we actually could get better representation? And you'll never know if you never have a go. So that's sort of how I answer the question when people ask me about it. And then I say, I'm going to have a go because I think we could do better. I think we could have a much better country and much better representation if we had more independents on the crossbench. So Sam, back to you, and I'll leave it there.
Oh, phenomenal. Yes, people are clapping. Thank you so much, Cathy. I just had goosebumps when you were talking about the power of the independents, particularly. I had no idea about the World War II story. I will indeed look that up. Really, and just to go through what Zali, Helen, Andrew, Rebecca, etc. have been able to do, and that distinction about what they've been able to stop as well. So important. So look, I'd like to introduce Chris Griffiths, who is one of our 50 plus volunteers, who I'm going to pose one question to Chris, and then she's going to ask you, Cathy, a couple more questions. So Chris, why did you decide to volunteer?
Thanks for that, Sam. Well, we live in Bradfield, which is a conservative electorate and has been a blue ribbon Liberal seat for years and years and years. And the performance with the Liberal Party at the moment is just, well, and in general, probably over the years, in my opinion, anyway, has been poor and inadequate. And their focus on the economy, the attitude towards the NBN, and the lack of a recognition of climate change, the lack of work around the Uluru Statement from the Heart, the inadequate response to coronavirus is just so frustrating. And I was sick of yelling at the television and sick of feeling really invisible with this monolithic party that, as Cathy's talked about, you know, that they're just, he just votes along with the party, not necessarily representing the people. And the more people that I was talking with around my area, they're feeling the same. They're feeling really frustrated and feeling like they need to do something, but they weren't willing to move to, it is a conservative electorate. They didn't want to move to Labor or the Greens or anything, but they really felt that they needed someone that better represented their needs, but they didn't want to go too radical. And I feel like we really needed someone to represent the community. I guess I have a social work background myself, and I do have a really strong belief in living in a democracy. What a wonderful thing. We're so lucky to live in a democracy. And as a citizen that lives in a community in a democracy, I feel like I have a responsibility to participate. No point just yelling at the television or just getting frustrated. I feel like I have an obligation to raise issues and represent issues that I talk with other people to, of matters that concern me. So I don't really, and I feel that sometimes we feel a bit intimidated about making a stand or saying something. I know sometimes I feel like that. I feel like all people are judging me or whatever, but that's what living in a good democracy is. You have a right to say something. And one of the things that I really like about Voices of Bradfield is they want to listen to what I think and have been really proactive in trying to draw people's views in and listen to them and be responsive. Both I've been in the kitchen table conversations and participated in some of the surveys, the survey that's being distributed and stuff. And they're encouraging people to have a view. They're not judging you, they're just wanting to hear it and wanting to represent it. And I think having a candidate that is like really independent and is going to listen to quite a lot of people around here that are frustrated is really important. And so for me to be a volunteer just means that I can help that movement and help to get someone, hopefully, to go into Parliament that can better represent the broad majority of people locally.
Beautiful. Wow. That was a superb summary. Thank you. And I think just having seen the demographic data that Rob showed us, we are the people, we are in such a position of privilege, and this is where it's people like us where social change happens. We're not running 3 jobs. We're not part of the gig economy and we're doing Uber Eats or running between 3 hospitals as nurses and on the front line, that sort of thing. We do have a little bit of the time, the space, the money. So we've got the rights, but also that potentially that responsibility. And what I also got from Cathy was it's so creative. You said something, Cathy, like I want to tell you some of the fun things we got to do, or more interesting, you said. So it's also quite invigorating, wouldn't you say, Chris?
Yeah, definitely. And I think at the moment, because we're all in lockdown, and too, we're not getting buzz from talking in person with people, but doing something is invigorating, isn't it? And being on Zoom and exchanging ideas is really great. And meeting different people through even, the social media and whatever has been stimulating, and it's a good thing to do. Plus, doing the letterboxing, you're walking, you're getting exercise, and you're doing something positive and enjoying the beautiful environment we live in.
Yes. And I've just noted a comment from Rob. We are the people we've been waiting for. That's right. No more waiting. There is some urgency. There's rustling that an election is going to come very soon. So yes, look, Chris, I'll hand over to you to pose a couple of questions to Cathy, and then we'll go to open questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And thanks, Cathy. It was really great to hear a little bit more about how the independents work in Parliament and their role in committees and policy work. But what I've been thinking is, what is it actually like not being part of this huge party and that has these alliances? Are you going to be on your own, and particularly with the recent sexual harassment issues for women politicians, what's it like in dealing with all those big parties, all those lobbyists and everything?
It's fantastic. Truly. Now, I've got to just put a proviso in. I was an independent. I was never in a party. So all those stories that you've been watching, misrepresented, and that's all about women in the parties. So it never covered off our experience. And that the film about Julia Gillard, like, she was Prime Minister. So I tell you what, it's a bit like thinking that all schools are run by teachers when you're not. When I first started, I felt like I was in prep, like totally ignored by everybody. So and I got to make my own way. So that was fantastic for me. And now I have to say, being a member of Parliament it's the highlight of my career. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it here, because I'm hoping that those of you who are listening tonight, even if you're not the person to put your hand up as a candidate, I'm hoping that you'll think, yeah, I know somebody who is. And after I finish talking, you'll go, oh, I will work my networks to find out who is the best person we know who could actually do this job. So for me, I was 60 when I became a member of Parliament. I'd run my own business. I'd had an international consultancy business working with women in agriculture overseas. So I knew my way around the world. I was competent. I could get contracts. I could back my own judgment. I was a good decision maker. I'd also been the national president of a peak non-government organisation called Australian Women in Agriculture. So I had been around Canberra lobbying forever. I knew my way around Parliament House. I knew how it worked. So I wasn't a newbie to the job. And I'd also employed people. I'd lectured at university. So, I was a worldly woman. So it was going to take a brave bloke to knock me off my pedestal, I have to say. And none of them even came near it. So that was fine. So it wasn't it was scary in that I had to represent my community and I wanted to do the right thing. And I also wanted to get re-elected. So making sure I was the best member I could be for my electorate was something that I worked incredibly hard at. And I grew better and better and better at as I was a member of Parliament. But the funny thing about Parliament House, the funny thing is that once I got there, I looked around and I thought to myself, this is a bit like Yakandanda or being on the PNC of Wodonga schools. Like, I thought, I understand how this works, like it sounds like it's high and mighty, but it's just another organisation. And if you've been in organisations, it doesn't take you long to work out who the movers and shakers are and how you can get things done. And I'd been spending my life working out who the movers and shakers were, and particularly the bloke movers and shakers, and how to get what I wanted done. So it took me a couple of years just to find my feet. And I have to say, I passed on everything I learned to Helen Haynes and Zali, and they are significantly better performers than I ever were because they've got the corporate knowledge now. So the job is fantastic because you have staff. Like, I had 12 staff. Helen Haynes, and it's a rural electorate, so she gets more. She's got 15 staff who help her do the job. So she's not by herself. You get an allowance of something like $300,000 a year to help you run your office. So you can do stuff. You can engage with your community. You get access to the parliamentary library. the Parliamentary Library has something like between 60 and 70 professional researchers whose only job is to inform the politics of your job. So you give the library a task, they come back to you with an incredibly professional discussion of all the ins and outs. So you don't have to know everything yourself. There's lawyers in Parliament House who draft legislation with your help. So you don't have to draft the legislation yourself. They'll help you do it and they work closely with you. And then there's the Parliamentary Budget Office, which does all the finances that you need doing. So if you want a costing on how much it would cost to introduce a code of conduct for members of Parliament, the Parliamentary Budget Office does all that work for you. So it's an incredible workplace to be in. And for sure, I think it's sexist, but there wasn't many sexist workplace. I mean, try telling me about working with the National Farmers Federation in the old days, or, you know, sexism. So that was a field I played in and knew about it. So it didn't rock my boat. So you can't be a shrinking violet. If that sort of stuff is going to rock your boat, you're not going to succeed at the job. But if you've got self-confidence, if you like a competition, if you've got a bit of ambition, and if you've got the motivation to do it, because you do need the motivation and the idealism. You can't just do it because it's a good job. You've actually got to be motivated. So I loved the job. And while I was very happy to pass it on to Helen Haynes, because she was going to be better than me, I also thought I was there for 6 years. I'd set myself an agenda. I'd done all the things I'd wanted to do, and I was ready to do something else. So, and I was 66, so that all worked well. So I think that's the other thing about being an independent. It doesn't have to be a lifetime sentence. You can get in there, give it a huge amount of work, do what you want to do, and then pass it on to somebody else who's going to do it even better and probably more different to you. Because that's what worked in Indi. It wasn't that, I think my community certainly appreciated what I did, but much more than that, they liked the idea of an independent. So when they voted for Helen, she didn't have a high profile, but they knew what they wanted. And when they saw and heard her talking, they said, yep, we're going to get more of that. So that's what I love about this whole thing about being an independent, is the community like the engagement. They like the fact that you represent them. They like the fact that when you do something that they don't like, they can hold you to account and tell you off, which they do. So, and whether or not they agree with you is absolutely irrelevant, really. It's the fact that they can tell you what they think, that you hear about it, and you've got to go, okay, sorry about that. I'll do better next time. So that's what I loved about the job. And for you, I know on Saturday, North Sydney launched their independent candidate, Kylie Tink, and doesn't she look wonderful? So I thought, yep, let's hope she gets in, because what a fantastic MP she'll be. Now, that doesn't mean to say she's going to be right for Bradfield, but you will know somebody in your community who will be right for you. It'll be somebody that there's 61 listening tonight. It'll be somebody that the 61 of us know. It's not going to be somebody other. They're going to be known to you. And they're probably not going to say yes straight off, like me. I said, no, I'm too busy. I'm too happy. I've got a good life. I don't want to be a member of Parliament. But my community did a job on me. My friends did a job on me. And slowly I came around to see that, well, if not me, who? And if not now, when? And all these wonderful people were saying, yep, Cathy, we think you're going to be good. We'll get behind you. And also, Cathy, never think it's just you. You know, you're the representative of the community. So don't get too big an ego about this. You know, we're going to be doing all the work. You're the spokesperson and the person at the front. But it really was a community effort. So I just wanted to, as I'm talking, to ask you to be thinking about and talking about, well, who do you know that probably won't be putting their hand up for the job, but if they knew that they had the backing of 61 or 500 or whatever the number is, would actually take it on board, and then grow into the job with the confidence and support that, they say the position makes the person. And I think that's the case with being an independent. You grow into the job because so many people help you do it. So, Chris, that's a long-winded answer, but I think you can hear how much I love the job and how much I enjoyed it and how challenging it was and how it used all my skills. And I was so pleased I had the opportunity.
That sounds amazing. Actually, it was a good entree into my next question, was around how I found was the most effective ways. You know how you talked about a lot about listening to the community and bring that back. What in practical ways, how did you do that practically? What was the most successful ways that you were able to communicate forwards and backwards, I suppose, with the community?
With my community?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, well, I live in my community. So I came home, I'm only in Parliament 20 days or 20 weeks. So I get home on Thursday night late, and then Friday morning I do a press conference. And in Indi, there's 3 TV stations, there's 4 radio stations, and there's umpteen newspapers. So it would be a live press conference every Friday after the parliamentary sitting week, and I would be in people's homes that night. And usually they'd package up enough stories that I'd be in the homes for the rest of their week, beamed into their TV, talking about what I was doing, what the issues were. So that's one thing. Easy. I mean, you have to be media competent, but I went and did media training really quickly, I have to say, and I got much better at it. But the other thing is I'd go shopping on Saturday, and my partner David refused to come with me after a bit because you can never duck in and duck out. You know, you could be there for hours. So I actually stopped going shopping on Saturday because it took too long, because everyone would come and talk to me. And I found the best time was Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. I could usually get in and get out a bit quicker. So you're hanging around your community, and then you turn up to events. Like I got invited, I went to every single envelope opening that I could possibly go to. And I bought a little, now this is not relevant in Bradfield because Indi is a rural electorate, but I bought a caravan, put all my branding all over it, and then just drove all around the electorate, and then set up mobile offices everywhere. And I, put all the ads out that I was going to be there, and all my volunteers came and they spoke to everybody, and everybody spoke to everybody. So it was not hard for the community to own me, and they did. And it still happens. Like I go shopping in Yakandanda is like 600 people, it's 10 Ks away. And, I'm still getting everyone telling me their stories. And a funny thing happened the other day. I went there, and the woman behind the deli, she said, "Oh, hello, Helen, how are you?" And I looked at her and I thought, I've got a sister called Helen. Do I look like my sister? And no, she's thinking I was Helen Haynes.
Oh.
And I thought, that's the biggest and Helen's blonde, doesn't matter. But I thought that was the biggest compliment, that we've morphed into the member of parliament, not the personality of it. So, yeah, I don't think you find that. And whoever you select, there's people like me and Helen and Zali and Rebecca will be there to support your person once they get to Parliament. So they'll never be by themselves. They'll always be surrounded by friends and belong. Even though you're not a party, we create that collegiate way of working, and it allows for difference. So there's no expectation that you're the same. It's just that we find a way of working together and supporting each other.
Right. Thank you.
Fantastic. Look, there's so much to draw out of that. One thing I'd like to bring up, I think, Cathy, is when you used to go and do your press conferences every Friday. That makes me think about the role of media, the role of independent media. We've got Kim from Michael West Media, if I can out you there, Kim. What would you say about the role of media as we're going through this process? Even from now, I have to say, many in the team were quite emotional today as we were preparing for this, because we feel it is a major step to be launching this search for our candidate, and you start to get more attention as you begin to take these next steps. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you, Cathy, just about your insights into media, independent media, and how you worked with that.
Yeah, so in Indi again, there was no Murdoch press, which was a fantastic thing. All our media was locally owned or otherwise owned, so we never had to battle that. This in the electorate, and in the electorate, the media always they have to fill their news space every day. So they were as hungry for my stories as I was for theirs. So it was a very, I won't say always amicable. We had some really good blues, but we worked together. So in the electorate, but I was there for them. I knew I needed them. They were a partner to me, and they knew they needed me as well. So we worked closely together. So I think that's really different in your electorate. I don't know what your media looks like, but nationally, one of the things that I found, which I really loved, was the national media always gave me space. Whenever I had something to say, it was no trouble getting the press gallery to run a story. And that's for a couple of reasons. One is I didn't abuse the trust. I made sure I had stories for them. And I made sure I always had a unique hook to give them. And so on issues such as, and this was, well, so anyhow, I got really good national media when I needed it. So when I was in, and I know Zali and Helen do too, they're often on the TV, they're often on radio. Now, they're not there about every single topic. They're there on the topics that are relevant to them. So, but one funny thing I'll tell you guys was, it was in the days when Section 44, the dual citizenship battle was taking place in 2017, I think. And you might remember Barnaby Joyce had an affair with his staff member and she was pregnant. And the result, like that was just, but anyhow, the result of that was Malcolm Turnbull and Scott Morrison introduced the bonking ban. But I have to say, that was all my fault. They got called the bonking ban.
Oh.
And I did an interview with Fran
Kelly.
Fran Kelly, yeah. And I'd been talking about what they'd done in the Congress in America and how they'd introduced it. And I just thought it was an innocent by the by, you know, reference to America had done it, so why couldn't we? And then it just got picked up everywhere and hashtag bonking ban became that. And so I had to duck. I was not going to do any more media after that. I thought that's enough trouble for me. I don't really want to get caught up with that. But so, yeah, the media worked very, very well. And I think in this independence campaign that's happening now, I don't know from the Sydney perspective, but from what I'm watching, the media has all been incredibly positive and incredibly, there'll be a backlash. You know, I'm sure the Murdoch press is going to find somebody to get in, someone will say the wrong thing or someone will get into trouble and they'll blow it all up. But currently the media has been incredibly supportive and interested. And it's because we've got something to say that people want to hear. So yeah. It's the fact that a community is going to choose their own candidate and that there's arbitrary group of people coming together to actually say we're going to represent our community. Like, it's such a good news story. It just plays so well for the media. Now, I think it's good to be nervous and it's good to not trust them all the time because somebody will spin it. But just for the moment, we're getting a really, really good run.
Yeah, well said. Look, Stuart's our master, and Julian also to some extent, I think, on knowing our local press and some local newspapers that are exactly where we need to be advertising, and we've got some ads coming out in them soon, and there's a local radio station, that sort of thing. I would just like to check in with Kim from Michael West Media to see you've got some thoughts on this, Kim.
Yes, thanks for that, Samantha. We operate both Michael West and Pearls and Irritations, and we have a reach of actually getting close to a million a month. That still makes us very small, but the role we play is one of being extremely issues focused. We have some flagship things that we work on, particularly around the federal ICAC. But we've also worked with people, like with Rex Patrick on tax reform and other issues like that. So the role I think we can play as independent media is that we are beholden to no one. We don't have a party agenda. We don't take advertisers. We don't take sponsorship. And we have a mailing list, which actually is quite influential. About a third of parliamentarians subscribe to Pearls and Irritations newsletter, the best example I think I can give is I hope you all will or have watched the Big Deal documentary that's just coming out, because that to me really embodies what collectively the independent movement, for want of a better word, is all about. It is bringing out to people, to the vast majority of people that just don't understand how broken the system is and how independent candidates can actually make a change. I mean, what Cathy talks about, and listening to Helen and Zali and Andrew Wilkie and what they do achieve, people just don't know. But I also think that Cathy is right, that also mainstream media is interested because they're interested in stories. And I think maybe it's because of my vantage point, but I think there is a groundswell of understanding that we need change. We really need some fundamental change, and to get out there to the majority that don't follow politics is probably the most important sort of issue that we have, and that we can help to bring it out there. So I'm trying to sort of reach out to candidates and say, are there issues? Are there courses? I don't, probably courses is not the right word, but are there issues out there that where we can bring our investigative journalism and our op-ed platform to bear? Then we're very happy to help with that. I am working on a story at the moment around just sort of introducing the Bradfield and the other electorates where there now is a strong voices of movement. Zimmerman last week announced in Sydney. So I like to think that there is a role, and a very specific role for us in independent media to help support what you're all doing.
Awesome, Kim. Thank you so much. Can I get a show of hands if you subscribe to Michael West Media or get Pearls and Irritations? Can you do either on the screen or with your button? Yep. No, there's scope there. I think you've picked up a few new ones tonight, Kim.
Excellent.
Yeah, very good. So look, we are open for questions. If you want to pop them in the chat. Oh, just while people are getting their questions together in the chat, we do have Big Deal. That's our next event coming up. And that's we've got Craig Rucastle speaking and Helen Haynes, as Stuart's put in the chat. So we're pretty excited about that. And as you say, people just do not understand how lobbying works, and it removes the veil from lobbying, and you just go, what, really? And then hopefully we double our volunteers in the next 2 weeks, and our candidate just pops out of the woodwork and we're off and running. So yeah, thank you for bringing up the Big Deal. We'll give you a link to that at the end too. Details, please. Yes. So questions. It's not often that you have somebody with so much experience in the Zoom room as Cathy. So fire away. What would you like to know from Cathy McGowan?
I could start off, okay, with a question to get the juices going. That's all right?
Go, Chris.
Okay. Cathy, I just was really interested in the issues that have just come up lately around the submarines and the way that the government is dealing with their foreign affairs portfolio. How does an independent, what is an independent capable of doing to influence or comment about those sort of things that are happening that are outrageous?
So, Christine, thanks very much for that. So let me try and answer how it goes. So in the first instance, your candidate is going to be asking you for their vote. And if somebody asks your candidate, what are they going to do about that? This is what I would be saying. I'd be saying, well, in the first instance, I've got to get elected. So vote one for me. And then when I'm elected as an independent, I will never be in opposition. I'm not standing to be in opposition. I'm always going to work with the government of the day to make things better. And I'm always going to put the people of Bradfield first. So in answer to your question about what do I think about nuclear armament, well, I've just got to say to you, it depends on a few things. One, I've got to get elected. Two, we've got to see who's in government. And then who's ever in government, what the legislation comes up before Parliament. And when the legislation comes before Parliament, I commit to consult with my community about that legislation. And I will always do that on important issues. So I can't say at the moment what I will do because there's no legislation there and I don't know what's going to happen. And then the person might say to me, well, what do you personally think? And I would say, well, as a member of Parliament, it's not actually what I personally think I'm going to vote on. I'm always going to be voting for my community. But personally, if you're asking me what I think about nuclear, this particular issue, I'd be saying, well, it's 40 years away. And in the interim, we've got to get COVID under control. So let's get COVID under control first and foremost. Let's get something happening on climate change. Let's get an ICAC. And then when we've got those things done, then we'll probably come and think about the budget on expense. But I'd also say, because I know a little bit about this, that that both parties have committed to spend 2% of our gross domestic product on defence. So I would be arguing let's spend 2% of our gross domestic product on education or childcare or other things. That's where my priorities lie. So that's sort of how I'd answer that question. But I think as a candidate, you've got to be really careful you don't get ahead of yourself because we don't know who's going to be in government. And you can't really talk about what you're going to do until you get there, because you've got to wait to see the legislation. And you've got to commit to go back to your community and get a sense from them about what they think and how they want you to vote.
Thank you.
Excellent. Look, I've got a couple of questions here. I just want to read this one out. Did you, that's such, I'm slightly surprised by the way you answered that, which is interesting. It makes me question my own assumptions. Did you ever have a personal view that ran very strongly counter to the electorate view? And how did you reconcile that? That's from Andrew.
So the answer is no, because I'm a person of my community.
And you yeah, right. You've okay, you've evolved in that. Okay, I hear what you're saying.
And not only that is my community knew me when they elected me.
Yeah.
So but it's not to say that there weren't issues that were hugely topical and created great debate. And I had to make a decision about them. So one of those was marriage equality. So lots of people tried to tell me that my electorate was conservative, that no one would want it. Well, I said, well, regardless of that, I told people I was going to vote for marriage equality. That's what I'm going to do. And I also believe I believe from talking to everybody and getting a feel for it, that majority of my community wants this. So, but there were a lot of people who said I was wrong and I wasn't reflecting the community. And in fact, you know, I think it was 64% of the electorate voted yes. Another very controversial bit of legislation was the Medivac legislation. So that was the Karen Phelps. People said, no, Cathy, you can't support it. No one wants it. And I said, well, it's right. It's just, I've talked to everybody about it. All the people I've spoken to said we should be doing better on refugees. Now, the fact that people might not have agreed with me, they certainly didn't get in touch with me. They, you know, some of them did, but not enough of them to make me think that they had the numbers. Whereas clearly my conscience, my connection with the community led me to believe that the Medivac legislation was the right one. So I voted for it.
Okay.
And I had to say that there was over 1,000 individual contacts with my office on that issue, telling me what people wanted. And 99.9% of them were saying support Medivac. So it's not hard. Your community lets you know on those issues.
Yeah.
And your community do. And I'm not saying it's the 100%, because, you know, perhaps 50% don't have an opinion, but the 50% who do have an opinion let you know. And again, we can help you with that once you get elected. But I know Helen and Zali have no trouble understanding what their community think, because people tell them all the time. And then if you need to know, you go out and ask. You do a monkey survey, or you have a phone call, or you have an actual process of asking people to ring in, or you do a street walk and people tell you. But it is not hard to know what people think. What is really tough as a member of parliament is working out how to vote with government, not so much on the controversial issues, but when you've got two bad options and you don't know which one's the least worst. And your community don't have an opinion about it, the library don't have an opinion about it, and you get really stuck. Well, and it, you know, and you get lobbied about which is the least worst, and it's often very hard to know there. So you've just really got to make a judgment call. But you're there's 151 people in Parliament, and there are you can go and talk to many of the others and say to the National Party or the Liberal Party, what are you going to do on this and why are you going to do it, and try and understand their reasoning. So, but that was the hard decision when something was really bad and you had to make a decision between the least worst option. That was difficult.
I hear you. Gosh. Look, there's a question coming from Sandy Killick. I'm going to go with I'll give you the first one, and then I'm going to dive over to Rob for the second one, if you don't mind. What are the top 3 to 4 skills a candidate needs to operate well in Parliament? And you've talked about it generally, the skill set that you brought to it. Are there any sort of 3 standout qualities that somebody who's sitting in the audience is going, gee, do I have these?
So you have to love people, really, really love them as an independent, because that's your job. You have to have a really good decision-making framework. If you can't make decisions, it's not the job for you. Truly, you've got to have practice doing that. So you have to be able to remove yourself that people mightn't like you or they might like you It's got nothing to do with that. It's actually got to be able to work out what the vested interests are, where your moral compass is, get the research done and make good decisions. So that's really important. And the third thing, I think you need to have a competitive streak in you. This job is not, if you don't want to win, if you don't want to actually, get out there and do it, it's really, as an independent, you can do that if you're in the parties. You can hide in the parties and do something, but as an independent, you've really got to want to take, like Zali has done with climate. She's got that competitive urge. She's a winner. She's really doing it. And Helen Haynes, she's really out there fighting the fight, doing the battles, doing the hard yards, constantly telling people that she's there. So you've got to have that want to win, I think. You don't want to come second in this game.
Yeah. And that's a very distinctive characteristic of people. I feel like you either have that or you don't. I don't think you can develop a competitiveness. It's sort of in you. So that's quite helpful. And it actually leads into our next question, which I'm going to direct to Rob if he's, I've got a sure. So what is Voices of Bradfield's, our team's process for choosing and screening a candidate? Rob.
I'm going to put my camera on. Lucky yous.
Thank you.
Can I first of all say that we have an incredible depth of talent in Bradfield. Senior corporate people, senior academics, who have shared their experience, and we have used that experience in developing what we're calling an expression of interest pack, which I think is pretty comprehensive. Which will go to anybody who expresses an interest. There's a link on the website about how to contact me in particular about expressing an interest in being a candidate. If you do that, you will receive this EOI pack. There's a bit of work involved in it because we're not talking about just something that's minor. We're talking about something which is a major life-changing decision for someone if they are successful, which will change their life and hopefully change Bradfield and Australia. I'm not kidding. So you will receive that pack. We have a dedicated team, which I am on, but some HR people as well, who will go through the applications. We will then proceed to calling people and saying whether they have been successful or not to get on the shortlist. And then we will interview people on the shortlist, the people on the exec. We are being driven by quality. The only real driver is when Mr. Morrison decides to call the election. And none of us know when he will do that. I certainly would not pretend to know what is in Mr. Morrison's mind. So we are going to be driven by the quality of the candidate. And it may be that we don't get people that we think we can support. It may be. Or we may get 5. I don't know. But to Cathy's point before, which I think is exactly right, and from talking to people in the Voices Network in other areas, it's not about the advertising for a candidate. It's about networking. It's you people on this call saying, who do I know that could fulfill this role, that could do what a Cathy McGowan has done, what a Zali Stegel has done? Have a chat with them. And if you want us to have a chat with them, we'll have a chat with them. That's fine.
Yeah, well said, Rob.
Are you happy with that, Sam?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And look, I want to give a plug. It's a perfect opportunity to Licia Heath's organisation, Women for Election Australia. And thanks, Rob, they run programs, courses, I think you might see it in the chat there in a moment, called Equip. And for local, state and federal government, they're skilling up women so that we have the confidence to go for these positions. That's Licia. Please have a look at her website. Now, Rob, there was a little bit in the chat about preferences. I might come back to you shortly, Rob, but there's a question on N's iPhone. Now, who is N, and would they like to unmute?
Apparently not.
No, they've gone. Okay. Cathy's just answered about kitchen table conversations. All right. Well, Rob, I'd love you to. One of the things that, as we got, oh, Cathy, you want to say something? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to talk about our volunteer program, because one of the questions.
Great.
Just
Yes,
2 seconds. I talk about that. So I have to say, when I first got elected, there was a huge amount of cynicism about politics. Like, people were happy to vote for me, but really government had lost a lot of trust. So I would say to people, well, if you're interested in politics, you can come and work in my Canberra office for a week, for 4 days. And initially people were a bit, oh, no, what does that look like? But we made it so people can, 4 hours drive from Northeast Victoria to Canberra. They could travel with my staff. We arranged billets in Canberra, so there was no cost involved. And they came and did an internship in my office for 4 days. And over the period that I was a member of parliament, over 200 people from the electorate came and did that. Lots of them were young people, but others were from local government, professional development teachers, all sorts of people came and worked in the office to see how to get things done. And one of my favourite stories is the group of young people from the Council of Wangaratta. They wanted better mental health services in their electorate. And I said to them, look, the government not going to listen to me on this. Why don't you come to Canberra and you talk to Greg Hunt about the problem? So they came up and they worked in my office for 4 days, and we introduced them to Parliament. We showed how it worked. We taught them about lobbying and advocacy. They went back to the council in Wangaratta. They got a proposal together for a head space in Wangaratta. They got the budgeting together. They got a consortium together. Then they came back to Canberra. My office organised the interviews, but we didn't go. And they ended up getting $2.4 million out of the Commonwealth Government to set up this headspace. Now, the government didn't let me make the announcement. They gave it to Bridget McKenzie, who is the National Party senator, to make the announcement. But everybody in the community knew it was my office and those young people who did it. So while Bridget was the mouth, it didn't work for her, because people knew, because all these young people had come and done it themselves, and they were all connected. So that volunteer program has been a bit harder to do now with COVID, but I'm sure Helen will get it going again in the next parliament when we're vaccinated. But again, that was another way of talking to people, was say, look, I don't want to tell you, you come and experience it for yourself. And then when you've experienced it, you can talk about it. Like, I'm not making this up. This is real, what we're doing. And people got that sense of trust. And other people would say, but what about confidentiality? And I'd say, well, there's nothing in this office that's confidential. Come on in. And they go, how can that be? And I'd say, well, because we don't keep secrets. And if we can't talk about it, we don't talk about it. So that was, again, totally different to how the parties work. So again, the community heard all about that. They loved it. And they grew in trust that I actually was what I said I was, which was transparent, open and honest. So that volunteer program, Jason, Wayne, so that volunteer program was a fantastic way of me engaging with my community as well.
Brilliant. And as Kate's just written, that involvement of the community, that level, it's the hallmark of a true democracy. Really wonderful. Yes, just reading the comments as they come through. So look, one of the things that you have to get your head around, if you're thinking about going independent and stepping up as a candidate or even voting independent, is preferences. And a lot of people do not understand the Australian system for preferences.
Yeah, so let me talk about this.
Okay.
There's a whole stack of stuff that people don't understand, which is fine. So what we did with our volunteer groups is we would do training sessions. So, and certainly once the campaign got underway, every Friday night we would do training. So we had, and you could do it by Zoom. So we would train people, but really talk about what is preferences and how does it work. And we developed a game. And if you go to my webpage, the game's actually up there. A guy called Tony Perrett's done a lot of work on it. And Tony would come online and he would run it for you online. But all my volunteers went through that training and learned how preferences worked. And not only did they learn about it, they actually got to talk about it and discuss it and come up with their own, so that it wasn't on high telling them, it was how they did it. So during the campaign, we did training on preferences and why they're so important. We did training on door knocking. And door knocking or phone banking is, how do you do cold calling? So we would workshop cold calling. How do you get the conversation going? What do you do when someone says, And we would put people into teams and they would work together on that. So they became really confident at answering the questions. And we also did workshops as the campaign got underway about how to hand out how to vote cards. So once the election's called and the date's set, you'll have pre-polling and you'll have polling, and you'll have all your volunteers doing how to hand out how to vote cards. And there's a real art about eye contact, smiling, where you stand at the booth, how do you get people to listen to you? And so we did workshops on those as well. But so all I can encourage you, Sam, is as these questions come up, to keep, for Bradfield people to keep a list of them, and then you run workshops online about them, and you run them not once, you do them every week. And then as you're going out door knocking and talking to people, if people expressed an interest in, you know, volunteering for Bradfield, you can say, okay, well, we're doing a training or something this Friday night. Why don't you come along and meet the gang? And then you can connect up. So you're not just trying to sell it to them, you're giving them an event that they can come to.
Yeah, and some learning that they get
and some learning, but also building the team as they get to know. And I think that's what my volunteers like more than anything else, was getting to meet new people, and then work together. And we had the most fascinating little groups go out and do door knocking. They'd never door knock by yourself. You get 2 or 3 of you together. And then we met for coffee at 9 o'clock in the morning and had where we're going to go. We got the map of the town out. We worked out what streets we were going to be doing. We'd go and do our door knocking. We'd had all our propaganda. We'd come back after 2 hours because that was enough. We'd have another coffee. Then we would debrief and we'd write up our reports. And it was so much fun. It was so social. And people loved the fact that here we were, volunteers door knocking on a Saturday or Friday, whenever it was, having talks with people about politics. And it wasn't politicians doing it. It was community doing it and engaging. And it was warm and friendly and good fun. And so building that collegiate spirit among your volunteers so that people can actually get to know each other, and particularly with your very high overseas born population, people would so welcome the invitation to be part of it. They probably won't put their hand up, but if you invite them to be part of it, to come and join the team and learn about preferences, that's easy. That's not even controversial.
Yeah, look, that's great advice. And I just want to reiterate that we really do need to reach out to those parts of the community that you're not seeing here. We're trying to get some of the pages of the website translated into Korean, Mandarin, and Cantonese. And I can't imagine trying to explain preferences in those languages. Rob is a Korean speaker, but what I wanted to just show you was that it's a potential scenario for the way preferences could flow specifically in Bradfield. Rob, if you don't mind showing us that one slide, that would be fabulous. While he's coming on, there are preferences that other parties and people on the card will give to us, and that's up to us to negotiate. And then the independent has to decide whether they want to pass on preferences or not, and that's up to the independent themselves. So it's sort of 2 flows, like a bathtub, in and out. And I'll hand over to Rob now. A mock count.
So people can see that, I hope. I have, for the sake of just ease of explanation, assumed 100,000 voters. We had 96,143 at the 2019 election, so I think that's a fair enough count. Preferences are an arcane art. They really are. So, and this is not the point to explain it in depth, but I do just want to show a scenario where a Voices of Bradfield candidate in our beautiful fuchsia comes third on the first count. All right, 45,000 is about what the incumbent is getting at the moment. It is possible to beat it, not by much, but you only need 50% plus 1. And that happens through preferences. So the preferences are from the minor ones, the ones below the 3rd rank, get distributed by count. The ALP always comes second here, but it's a long second. As you may understand from the demographics here, and certainly the people who live here know this is not an ALP electorate, and it never will be, or at least for the foreseeable future, it won't be. The people that we talk to 60% of this electorate vote Liberal on their first preference. 3 out of 5 adults you talk to are voting Liberal. It's their votes that we need. It's their preferences to go, I don't want to vote Labor. I never have, I never will. I don't want to vote Green. I never have, I never will. But if there is a credible candidate that says to me, I'm not Labor or Green, that I can give my preferences to, we can get over the line. So look, we talk to a lot of people, and as I said, 3/5 of the people who vote in this electorate are Liberal. And often the first question we get is, you will never win.
Mm.
To which you can respond that Mr. Fletcher is currently on 66% after preferences. Josh Frydenberg was on 63% after preferences. He is now in a marginal electorate.
Mm.
That's Kooyong. That is Robert Menzies' seat. That is Andrew Peacock's seat. All right? The times are changing, and people, we know, because we are talking, 3/5 of the people that we talk to are Liberals. They vote Liberal. We know that they are upset, and we know the issues that they are upset about because we talk to them and we listen to them. The Liberal Party is not doing that.
Brilliant,
So,
Rob.
there is a path to victory, guys. It's a hard one. I'm not saying it's easy. I was sure as hell not saying it's easy, but there is a path.
Brilliant. I hope that gives everybody, I don't know, what's the right word? That blows me away. You just see the data and go, okay, it brings it into the realm of possibility. So, look, we're very close to time, and I'm just reading a couple of things here. I have a friend who knows fluent Mandarin. Fantastic. I've just been looking for languages on the side here. So Cathy definitely wanted the final word. And what I'm going to say, since we are close to time, is there's a number of links, including to Ruth McGowan's book, Get Elected, Cathy's book, which is just the photo. It's just sensational, Cathy. Well, I'm going to send out links to those in the email that comes to all of you. I want to share one thing. We've mentioned Craig Rucastle and Helen Haynes in a fortnight. I'm going to screen share just to show you. I'm sure many of you have seen it, but this is what our website looks at the moment. Can you see that? Call incredible candidates. Yeah. So I like to think of them as incredible candidates. We are looking for the really, you know what we're looking for. You've heard it all here now already. But please don't be shy about telling your friends about what we're doing. And there's a culture here where we don't really talk about politics, which is to our detriment. We need to start talking about politics and what we believe in, and that we're after change. So that's where you've come to tonight, the launch. Just to say, the survey is top right there. I think you can see my cursor, and down the bottom is this very important, not the dog is cute, but donate button down the bottom there. And then I'm going to unshare my page and just show you one more, which I thought was worth showing. If you wanted to share screen, here we go. That is another way. If you just took your phone and took a screenshot of that, it would take you straight to our PayPal page. I was just so impressed that I worked out how QR codes work. And look, we've had some fantastic donations, a big one of 1, 2, 3, 5 figures, and then as little as $50, $20. It's all of it goes towards the t-shirts, the flyers that the volunteers are dropping out to every single door in the electorate, as well as just paying for things like websites and SurveyMonkey and you name it. So please be in touch via the website. You all know where it is. And I'm going to say thank you so much to each and every one of you for being here. I'm going to hand over to Cathy for the final word, and then we can clap her out.
So I have got some final words. That never doubt that 2 or 3 people have changed the world. In fact, It's the only thing that ever has. So don't underestimate your own power. That the paths to doing this future, they're not set. You get to make up how you do this. So I really encourage you to be the change you want to see. It's not that it's almost going to happen that the world's a better place. You get to make it a better place by how you do this campaigning. And I want to say, like you're here tonight, but you are all part of a network. And I would be asking you to have over the next week a conversation with 4 other people, maybe 10 other people, and get 4 of them to sign up, because we need to grow the networks. And that's the task I wanted to never underestimate the power of you engaging with your networks to get people to become part of this team, because you need the numbers. And the number that I was given was that for every volunteer, that probably could translate, if they're active, to 50 votes. So you can probably work out how many volunteers you're going to need on your team to get those numbers that Rob has just shown us. So bringing it to a close, it just seems to me that the timing is magic for us. The issues are there. We've got such a poor government. So it's such a good time for us to say, let's do something about integrity. Let's do something about climate, because we can't wait another 10 years. But I wanted to give you a couple of other things, a couple of other issues to leave you to think about that are longer term. We need action on reconciliation. We really need our parliament to be addressing it. And I don't get any sense that the parties are going to do it. We really need action on what sort of nation are we going to be as when the Queen dies. Are we going to stay as a monarchy, or will we become a republic? So there's much bigger issues out there that we really, really need to grapple with. So we need our federal members of parliament to be actually engaging with us as a community so that our voices on these big issues can be heard. And what you're doing tonight is creating the community context for those much bigger issues to take place. So I want to send you forth to do the work. And the work is conversations, warm, friendly, generous conversations, and asking people to sign up, not to talk politics necessarily, but to come along to learn about preferences, if that's what it takes. So in saying goodnight, I really look forward to coming back and being part of your team as you move forward, and doing training with you if I can, giving you links to other people who can help you do the training. But just to dip my lids to you all and say, be motivated, be inspired, and go and have those conversations.
Oh, what a superb finish. Do the work, have those warm, friendly conversations. Thank you, Cathy. Please unmute and just give Cathy a big woohoo.
Woohoo!
Cathy.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you.
Really brilliant. Have a great evening, everyone, and we'll see you down the track, through the website, on the streets. Great. Take care.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Bye-bye. Good night.
Yeah, that was pretty, actually.